Was in Numa the entire 4.5 years I was here. So glad you're all also here because you're still buying pizza. So today we're just going to go a little over search engine optimization, or like SEO 101. So that's like if you have a paid component of search, this is the free organic side. We'll touch on some other elements of digital marketing. If at any point comments, questions, or concerns, just shout them out. I don't know for the online people how that works, but
use the chat.
Use the chat. So today we're going to go over a little bit of just like what SEO is before going into the 3 different pillars of it. So technical SEO, content strategy, and then local and social foundations. And we have some activity breaks, so it's exciting. So just going over a little bit of what SEO is. Basically, like what I tell my parents is I just like help my clients rank higher on Google. And like that seems to be enough. For you guys, basically what it is the process of increasing both the quality and quantity of the amount of people coming to your site. So it's the idea of, hey, like, let's say you have this website. Yeah, you want a lot of people to come to it. But if the types of people that are coming come to your site and are like, oh, like, this is useless, like I have absolutely no value from that, then like, you don't like, that's useless. So it's the idea of getting like more relevant people, even if that's like a smaller percentage of the overall population. Part of this, you also have to understand what people are searching for when they are online, as well as the user intent. And we'll get into that to a couple of slides later. And then also it's the idea of not only once you like know your audience, know how they're going to get to you, how do you like deliver the information both on site and then off site? Like your website's broken, like it doesn't matter like how great your product is or how great the information you're sharing is. So why is SEO important? Part of it is it just covers a lot of organic real estate. We're going to mostly talk about Google, but it's the idea of when you type something in, like a lot of people just automatically skip over the ads. If like you're in the quick answers, if you're in the like knowledge panel on the side, if you're like one of the top organic listings, people are more likely to go to your site. It also helps with credibility. If you are on like page 7 of Google, chances are people are like, yeah, like maybe this is spam. But if you're on like the 7th position on the first page, people are more likely to think that you know your stuff, your products are good, they're more likely to want to interact with you. And then also it helps drive the majority of online traffic. People in general like will go to a search engine and then they will organically search for something when they're looking for specific things. And then in general, it's just helping deliver better information based off of what people are searching for and kind of closing that gap. So then a little bit of like the nuts and bolts of how it works. So there's these things called spiders that crawl. They're like obviously not really spiders, but they're like a search engine like Google will send out spiders across the internet to crawl your site. And then it kind of just like takes a look around and it like follows your menu and like it'll like go to your sitemap and be like, what kind of pages do we have, to get a general understanding of the type of content on your site and like what your value is. And then they will take that information and kind of just like store it on their servers. So then when any of us go to search for something on a search engine like Google or like Bing, it'll pop up. And if you're looking for an example we'll use later, it's like a donut near me. They're like, oh, like I know what this girl wants. She lives in Boston, like she's in the northeastern area and she goes to Dunkin' 4 times a day. Like she probably wants to find her nearest Dunkin', and they will provide you that information. So kind of this idea of like filtering through the files that they have that they've already like stored rather than having to like go out and search the internet again. So that's just a little bit of that like back end, like using algorithms. Obviously Google's algorithm is like this long. It changes like every other day. So it's the idea of like kind of like classifying that information on your site and then updating to make sure that you, the consumer, continue to go to use a search engine like Google, because Google makes money when they serve us ads and when you click on ads. But the only reason that you're going to click on an ad on Google is because that you trust that Google will give you accurate and relevant information. So by providing this free experience, they're then able to later on make money from advertisers that hope that you click on an ad instead of an organic listing. So a little bit about where people are. This is some 2019 data from Statista. Majority of people are on Google. So I will be using Google interchangeably for search engines, but like obviously people search elsewhere. Like maybe you have a Microsoft product and you just like never automatically switch. So every time you click on it, it like opens up Bing or Yahoo. If like internationally, there's like other like Bando or like Yandex, like there's like different sites that you could do. But for the majority of the time, I'll be speaking about Google, but no, I mean search engines as a whole. But like mostly Google. So then when you search something, you guys have obviously all searched something before in your lives. What you receive is a search engine results page, also called the SERP. So just like breaking this down a little bit. Here's an example if you search for Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So you'll see at the front here, at the very top, you have some paid ads. There's usually paid ads at the top as well as the bottom, usually like 1 to 3. And here you can see that is like the first thing you come across because people are paying to be shown. I don't do paid search, but there's a lot that goes into that, including like cost per clicks. And then, you know, if you're optimizing for cost per impressions, really depends on like what your goals are. And then depending on the complexity of the keyword. So something like Dunkin' Donuts coffee maybe costs like $5 in paid search. But like if Starbucks was bidding on a Dunkin' Donuts coffee keyword, it might cost them like $8 because the page is like not really relevant for the search. And then when you get into some of the like more generic keywords like donuts, like they tend to cost a little more. Pumpkin spice latte tends to cost a little more versus like, I don't know, if you want like a specific like refreshers from Dunkin', if you want a specific type of, you know, using like branded keywords, more like longer tail searches that have a lot more keywords, things like that tend to be a bit like less expensive, the more like specific you get to it. But then even like there are some like car companies where if you have like an off-road vehicle, like maybe the ad, you spend like $15 for someone to come to your site, but there's only like 1,000 people that search for it a month. So like you're more willing to, you know, put your chances in if like out of 100 people, like 4 convert, then it's worth the $15 versus something like coffee where like the average order value is like $3. Like maybe you don't want to spend $3 for someone to like maybe come to your restaurant or site. So then immediately under that, you have the organic listing. Usually there's a lot more, but I picked a local listing, so we can also talk about the map pack. But the organic listings, they don't have the ad next to it. It's basically what Google determines is the most relevant on the top, going to least relevant as you continue, and then the additional pages. And then this is determined by an algorithm, so it's specifically relevant to you. So like all of us right now could search for Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and like for me, hot coffee comes up, and maybe you always buy iced coffee. Iced coffee might come up for you, even if like if we search more general, like just coffee, maybe again because my primary client is Dunkin'. Dunkin' will come up for me because I visit their website like 60 times a day. But like if you love the blue bottle, you're more likely to potentially like get the blue bottle listings closer to the top. If you're like near Canada, you might get Tim Hortons, like things like that. So it's very like personalized because chances are you're signed into your Google account. So when you're on your phone and you're like logged in there with like your Gmail, they know what you're searching for. So then when you move to your desktop, they know what you're searching for. And when you're like logged into like your work computer and you're doing other things, if you're also logged into your account, they know what you're searching for. So there's like a lot of data people know about you here. But then next on here, we have the Google Map Pack. So that starts off with 3 specific listings. So in this case, we search for Dunkin'. So they're going to show us 3 Dunkins. But if we search for something more general, like a coffee near me, you might get like a Dunkin', a Starbucks, a blue bottle, you might get like a Caribou. So here we'll see we have the map data, which we'll go into a little later, but that's the name, address, phone number, which is the most essential information that you need in order to have one of these listings. As well as here, it's like the hours, the website, directions. And then in order to increase your likeliness of appearing here, you can make a Google My Business profile where you enter all the information about your company if it has an actual location. And then optimizing your website as well as your listing based off of categorization, pictures, things like that to, again, reaffirm to Google, hey, like this is relevant information, this is accurate. If somebody like clicks on 106 Cambridge Street and they come here and I say it's open until 8, if it's like 7:30 and they show up and it's closed, Google's gonna, you know, they might like leave a nasty review. They might like edit the hours. Google has less faith that they're providing a good experience. What if because of that you go to Bing, which you wouldn't, but like what if you did? And then Google would be able to serve you ads later on. There's just an example of like, in this case, a local listing, but there's other things like quick answers where they have like the drop downs that quickly give you the answer. They have the like knowledge cards either at the top or on the side. So like if you search for like Elon Musk, Zac Efron, you know, like Aretha Franklin, like things on the side, basically it'll pull in like from the Wikipedia article. If you like are Zac Efron, then you probably could like change some of that in the same way that like we can control some of the Dunkin' listings. So we can be like, oh, like it opened in like 1906 versus like, I can't go into Starbucks and be like, you're closed. So kind of things like that. It really depends on the type of business you are, the type of searcher you are. And we'll get into that here. Talking about a little bit of the variety. So like on the left here, we're still on donuts. We'll get off donuts in a little bit, but versus what's in a Boston cream donut. So this is more of a like exploratory informational query. So here you see that this is the quick answer. We're at the top, like Wikipedia will tell you like exactly what's in a Boston cream donut. And you can click in if you have more information. You have people ask us on the side here. So they have like, what is it made of? Why do they call it a Boston cream donut? Things like that to further your search. But basically you don't need to go to the site to like answer your question, but it gives you a little bit of, okay, maybe, you know, Wikipedia like will answer my questions in the future. Then on the second one, we get to a much more generic search. So we have Boston cream. So for something like that, Google's like, what do you want with it? Do you like, you know, if you wanted to know what was in it, you would probably have searched a bit more. Are you looking for one near you? Are you looking to know what it is? Are you looking how to make one? So here it has the Wikipedia article similar to on the left, but it doesn't provide the quick answer because it doesn't have a quick answer because you didn't ask a question. And then here it has the New York Times cooking in case you wanted to make a Boston cream donut, and then some videos from brands as well as more like editorial places, you know, showing like how people make Boston cream donut, like maybe how you like to make one at home, things like that. So they like aren't really sure what you want, so they give you more variety. But then when we go right one, we have Dunkin' Donuts Boston cream. So all of a sudden we are narrowing that down. So we specifically want a Boston cream donut from Dunkin'. So the first listing that they have is the donuts page on Dunkin', as well as some people also ask, it's like how many calories, what's in it, is it the same, is Boston cream the same as custard? Some questions that maybe like people search for this and then later had more questions. So Google's just trying to like answer anything that you might have right off the bat. And then on the right, we'll say you want a Boston cream donut and you know you want it from Dunkin', rather than being like, oh, like where's the nearest Boston cream? You're like, just tell me where the Dunkin' is. So here's an example of when you do like Dunkin' near me, if you like typed it into your maps, similar to the map hack we talked about earlier. There's like 3 different Dunkin's available and you can immediately get directions to. So something like this shows is that your site really should be optimized for every relevant stage in the purchasing path. So like a lot of that really depends on the type of client you are. If you like sell a good, maybe it makes sense to make sure that like your product display pages or like your checkout is easy to get to. If you like, one of the clients I work on is like a cancer care facility, that's obviously like, they're not gonna like be like, oh, like find like the nearest like hospital near me, because like chances are you need to make an appointment. So it's like, what are you like trying to provide as a service? Because like for Dunkin', you can't check, we don't have online checkout right now. So like if I'm like buy Dunkin' Boston cream, we got to get you to a store. We can't like just get you to the website and be like, oh, like, you know, here's what it is. It's like, no, like I know what it is. Like I want to go get one. So it's kind of like figuring out what you actually want, even if you didn't necessarily search for what you like needed in that moment. And this is also really interesting because something came out earlier this week called MUM, which is like a multidisciplinary like update to the algorithm. And it kind of talks about this idea of like how we have people have evolved in terms of searching. So like rather than being like, let's say I wanted to know like, say my bike broke and I don't know anything about bikes. So I could like just take a picture of like the part that's broken and then also type in like fix. So then all of a sudden, like they'll start matching to videos of like this and like fix, or maybe like no one's wearing a pattern. Maybe like I really like your top. Yes, you. And like, but maybe I'm like, oh, I don't want a sweatshirt. I want like socks that say that. I could like take a picture of your top and be like buy in socks or pattern in socks. So then like it will like take that information. And it's still being rolled out, but like take that information and be like, okay, like what do we know on the internet? Like that looks like that, but it's actually socks. So like things like that, trying to be more understanding of like initially it was like just text-based, and then it's like just, you know, and then we like added on this whole layer of like voice search and people speaking to their Alexas and their Google Homes. And then this next step of like, hey, like, what if I want to like search for something that I don't know what to look for? This is like maybe like your significant other like loves this type of flower, and you've like seen a type of picture of this flower, and you go to the florist and you're like the red one that isn't a rose, and they're like, that's not gonna work. So then you're like, oh, like you have like a picture of it, you like take a screenshot and then you add more like buy, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, did you mean the carnation? And you're like, yeah, I did. So it's like this like idea of like constantly evolving and like trying to figure out a more like human approach and understanding that like we don't always know what we even like want to search for and helping you get there. So then a little bit about the Google algorithm. So as I just mentioned, like it updated on Monday, and it updated in June, and it updated in February. So it's constantly changing. But by the time you like figure out how to optimize your site for the last update, they've updated that. So like that's part of like the cool part of like SEO is this idea, and digital marketing as a whole is this idea of like everything's constantly in flux. So it's less like something that my boss says that I really like when talking about organic and paid search. He's like, paid search is very much the Einsteins. It's a bunch of math. You sit down and you figure out like, hey, if we increase our quality score like this, or increase our bids by this %, then we're going to get X amount more store visits, more more conversions, etc. Well, SEO is more of the Sherlock. It's more like, hey, like, what if we change this? What if we change this? Like, where are we lacking, and where can we like make up stuff in order to kind of improve the site as a whole? And it's less like cut and dry. And then part of that too is like you can be making a lot of changes, and sometimes you only want to make one change even though you have like 3 great ideas, because if you make 3 big changes and all of a sudden your site goes up, was it because the site's faster? Is it because you have more backlinks, or is it because like you have more content? So you don't really know like what's working. But then some things about like what goes into like organic search results. So most importantly, it has to do with the relevance to the keyword, because they want to just match what people are searching for. But then outside of that, there's like more than 200 ranking factors. So things like the quality of content, like maybe your entire site is like really targeted for like Matt James on The Bachelor. You are like a Matt James fan page, but really you just have like the word Matt James like 400 times on your site. So I'm like, you know, he's on Dancing with the Stars right now. I want to know his backstory. Like I want a hardcore fangirl. So I go to your site and it's like crap. It's just like his name a bunch of times, maybe some like weird pictures or whatever. So you like immediately bounce. Google's gonna be like, okay, like relevancy. They had like a bunch of like keywords that we were interested, but like the site's shit. So maybe like we don't serve that in the future. So this idea of like, it's called like white hat and black hat. It's like the, if you're like trying to just like keyword stuff and like in the back end of code, just like add a bunch of keywords, like Google is like smarter than all of us. So it's this idea of, hey, like you're not gonna like hack it, okay? And like maybe you can for a little while, but then they're gonna realize that you're being shady, and then they're gonna penalize you for it. And then there's things like backlinking, which we'll get to a little later, which is like the more people that say that your site's legit, the more Google believes your site's legit. The page experience, so like are there a bunch of pop-ups? Like, do I like hate being on the page? Do I bounce quick? And then speed. And we'll talk about speed a little bit later, because that's something that since like February, Google has cared like a lot about. This is the idea of like we're all super impatient, and if we have to wait more than like 2 seconds, we're just not going to wait for the page. So like starting to put a lot of weight on that. And if you fail, like it's called core web vitals. If you like fail core web vitals and your site's just like garbage, or like it just like you have like everything going for it, but it just takes forever to load, just like not ranking as higher because Google recognizes that like people don't want to wait for it. And then all of this is basically to help you get as high up on the page as you want, like in the site, but like specifically on page 1. And part of that is just like, as I'm sure all of us know, like if you search for an ice cream sundae, which is like a more generic keyword, there's 22,000 people a month that search for ice cream sundae. And like 19% of people will go to the first listing and they're like, this one is the 21 best ever ice cream sundae recipe ideas. And like chances are, if you're searching for an ice cream sundae, you either want one near you or you want to know how to make one. So 19% of people will go to this first one. They'll like read the like 7, 19, 27, 21 best ice cream sundae recipes. They'll pick on one they want. They'll like have their ice cream sundae and then they're done. But like an additional 9% of people will be like, I hate British Home. I don't want to read that article. And they'll go to the Food Network. And maybe like that one specifically is talking about like how to make like an ice cream sundae with like vanilla. But, like you only have strawberries. So you're like, that one's useless. Then you get to the next one, and 7% of people like then get to the next one. And 4% gets to the next one, and 3% gets to the next one. And by the time you're on page 2, like 0.001% of people get to that. And this is the idea of if you were to go from position 4 to position 3, that's an increase of 1,500 searches a month. If you go from 3 to 2, that's about 2,000 visits a month. And you go from 2 to 1, that's an additional 4,200 visits a month. And it's the idea of, hey, like how many tries do you really have in someone? Like maybe I'm like scrolling through and I actually just wanted the Wikipedia summary. So like I would go down to, in this case, the 5th listing. It's the idea of like, once you have your question answered, are you like still gonna like look for more information? It's kind of like the idea of the last, something's in like the last place you looked. It's like, well, yeah, why would you keep looking once you found it? So like the higher up you are, just the more people that go to site. And then like, let's say like you get an additional 2,000 visits a month and like 5% of people that go to your site, like convert, however that is to you. That's 5% of 2,000 people. And if you have like an average order value of like $5, then that like translates to like real money, which is cool. Also stressful. So then just getting into some of the influencing factors we're going to talk about. You have some of the technical stuff, which is like the base of your pyramid. Because if your site doesn't work, like it doesn't matter how great anything else is. And then the second is the content. So it's like, is the actual stuff on the site good? And then really at the top is the credibility. It's like, do other people think it's good? Or do you just think it's good? So kind of getting into some of that. So we're going to start with technical SEO. There's like a lot in technical SEO. These are like the main 5 things. We're going to talk about 2 things. Basically, most important thing is to submit your sitemap and your robots.txt file. You can technically, like if you go to any site and then you like / sitemap.xml or robots.txt, you can like see a sitemap. Sometimes like name them weird, but for the majority of sites, that's like what it is. And a sitemap basically is a list of every single URL in your site. And then a robots.txt file is the first thing that a spider will interact with. So it'll go to your robots file and it'll basically be like crawl the entire site, or it'll be like, hey, like crawl everything except like this like URL. Maybe it's like the admin pages, the like perks pages, like whatever. So like you're basically telling it whether or not to like waste its time on certain things. So that's like, again, like back end, like nobody looks at it. I mean, I look at it, but I get paid to. So the next one is like cleaning up broken links. The idea of like, you go to a page and it just like doesn't exist, or it's sending you someplace that doesn't make sense. Like that sucks. And you're probably like, this website is annoying and I don't want to deal with it. So you'll just like go to a different one, especially since we as searchers, or as like consumers, have so many options. The third one is getting rid of duplicate content. So this is the idea of if Google sees you have like 7 pages that are all saying the same thing, it's like, this feels spammy. The fourth one is Schema Markup, which is basically like a code that you can put on pages that helps Google read your page better. So like if you have a recipe, like if you have a food blog and you're like, these are my recipes for like an ice cream sundae, you can like write up some like code And it like will help it figure out like like how long it's going to take, how long you have to cook it for, what the ingredients are, the steps, things like that. And then there's like a ton of different schema for things like how to's and like if you got a video, things like that. And then we're also going to talk about improving page speed, since that's increasingly important nowadays. So first things first, is your site secure? So the S in HTTPS is security. So it's basically just making sure that like you basically just have to buy it. And it's like, this is much more secure. It's like stopping from hackers. I feel like a lot of people initially were like, why would I like do this? Like the consumer doesn't notice, but now Google will have like a little notification in the corner. It's like, do you really want to enter your credit card information? Like, we don't think this is secure. And all of a sudden, if you're like, well, do I want to buy from this third party, or do I want to spend $2 extra to buy it from the site? Like this one says that like, I'm gonna like ruin my credit score. And this one is like Sephora. Then like, you know, maybe you just want to like buy from the Amazon, the Sephora, like Zappos, something like that. So Google prefers the secure sites, because the last thing you want to do, what Google wants to do is serve you a site that ends up being sketchy, that steals your information, and then you tell everyone that like you bought something off the sketchy site because Google told you to. So again, just like making sure that like you want to keep going back. Another thing is redirects. So this is the idea when you go to a page and they're like, just kidding, and then they send you to a different page. This is something that's like necessary sometimes. Like for some of the clients I work on, like we don't sell certain things anymore. And we're like, well, you wanted a blueberry muffin. I mean, we still sell blueberries. Like you wanted a crayon apple muffin. We don't sell that. Like here's like the general muffin page. And like you as a consumer are like, this is close enough. But something that you can get issues into are redirect chains. So that's the idea of like, you wanted the cranberry apple page. They're like, let's send you to like the coffee cake page. We don't own that either. So now we're sending you to the bakery page. The bakery page has been renamed. So now we're sending you to like this other page. So like it takes a second to load, and then you're like, oh no, and it sends you to a different page, and it takes a second to load, and it takes a second to load. And if there's like, you can have a ton of redirects. Like if you got like 7 redirects, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna load, it's gonna load, it's gonna load. It takes a while. So basically it's like redirect all the pages until the end page. The idea of like, if you're on a scavenger hunt, like what's quicker, if like the first clue sent you to the last clue, or if like the first clue to the second clue to the third clue to the fourth clue to the last clue. It's the idea of like, if you want to get there fast, like you just want to skip to the end. So this idea of just like not like wasting as much time, and you can put in 301 or 302 redirects, either a permanent or a temporary redirect, just to like get you to the site much quicker. And then we have 404 errors, and that's when a web page isn't found. This is not an ideal situation. Like Lego and Pixar have like cute ones, but at the end of the day, it's when you like show up to a site and you expect us to see a page and your page isn't there. And what they would like love for you to do is then go to the search bar on their site and type in like, this is what I wanted. But realistically, if I show up and they're like, the page doesn't exist, I'm just going to go back and go to the second, third, whatever listing. And that's just going to be a competitor. So what they should do in a situation like that is just redirect you to the closest thing, or even just like the home page. But the idea is it's just like, it's like not a good experience. So like, at least for like Pixar and Lego, maybe you're looking for something that like, we got nothing close to what you wanted. Like here's like a cutesy little thing that maybe you want to like stick around, but in general, like the less 404s you have, the better. And then we want to talk about page speed. So that's exactly how it sounds. It's how quick your page loads. One would say it's the speed of your page. So basically, like how long do you want to spend just like sitting there waiting for something to load? So it helps search engines crawl from like the back end to start. Like the Google spiders, like they also, like Google doesn't want to waste time. Like crawling a bunch of pages is going to take like 3 minutes to load. But like, we're just never going to serve this page and not waste any of our times. And the idea of like, it's like, it feels ridiculous to say like, oh, if I have to wait 2 seconds, I'm more likely to bounce. But like when you're like sitting there like on your phone and it takes 2 seconds, like feels like forever. So we're just like have such a low tolerance for that as like a people. So there's something called Core Web Vitals that came out a couple months ago. There are 3 different things that it measures your page on. The first is cumulative layout shift, or CLS. And that's basically, like, you know, when you like load a page and you like start reading it and like 3 seconds in, all of a sudden ad loads and then it like moves your spot and you like scroll back up to it and then like another ad loads and then you're lost and you're annoyed and you get off. So like that's that. It like accumulates the amount of like the layout shit that there is, and the higher the worse, because it's annoying. It's so annoying. Slate Magazine does it all the time and it drives me up a wall. And like then I have like a negative experience so much that like I'm like telling you all Slate Magazines like you live layout just sucks. The next one is first input to life. So this is how long it takes you to like interact with the page. So it's like the first second you can like start touching stuff. So like it's like when it loads and it looks like it's good, but like because it's still loading on the back end, like you can't actually like interact with it. So the longer that takes, the more frustrating it is, because kind of similar to like, oh, like it loads, but then it moves around. This is like I'm looking at it, but I can't touch it. So then I'm just like kind of frustrated. And I'm like, is my phone frozen? Because like God forbid I wait more than like 2 seconds. And then the last LCP is largest contentful paint. So that is how many seconds does it take for the largest image on your site to load. Usually if it's like a home page, it's like the big banner, something like that. And that's, it kind of like plays into the other ones. Like if you've got like a really big image, it's probably gonna move stuff around on your page, things like that. But also just that's an example of like how long does it take for like your actual page to load in its entirety, because usually the largest one is like the last one. So we're gonna take an activity break. So you can go either to this URL or you can just Google PageSpeed Insights, and chances are it's the first one. And if anyone wants to find for me Boston/Cambridge Museum that has like the slowest website. So it's like you're gonna put in like mfa.org or whatever it is, and like other Boston museums, and whoever has like the worst score out of 100. I'm just gonna do this for like a minute until we got some pitiful scores. Last time we did this presentation, we did the colleges, and they were all embarrassing. So also feel free to put something in the chat. Oh yeah, thank you, Rachel.
Oh, yeah. No problem.
Rachel put something in the chat.
Let's see, do we need so we need the full URL, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in another browser, just like Google Boston Museum. I'm sure everyone feels like it takes the longest, probably will.
Which museum was this supposed to be?
I mean the slowest one,
Oh,
like the most pathetic one.
Gotcha.
When you think of Boston museums, which one you're like, ah, that website probably sucks. Anybody have scores for any? We need another minute.
I have a 7.
Oh, that's real though. Which one is it?
Boston Children's.
Oh, that's real sad. That's real sad. Nodding in the back too. Wow, can anybody beat a 7? It's real.
Like 39.
What's 39?
It's MFA.
Nice. Just for context, I know we talked about it on the last slide, but that's not good. Boston Children's is like real low though.
The kids can read. I got 19 from Museum of Science.
Okay, solid. So far we don't even have any average ones.
Okay, MFA, I got 19 for that.
Nice. Wow, look at them. They're so much better by comparison. And like part of it too is like, I mean, the Gardner Museum, according to Google, is in the average, but if like all their competitors are like so much worse, then like they're great. They're the fastest thing in here. No one in the chat has anything.
I don't think it counts as a museum, but I got the Boston Aquarium. It's a 23.
Oh, that's pretty pathetic too.
Yeah.
Boston needs to step it up. To be fair, they're mostly government funded by agencies, so a little unkind. But next we're gonna move to that second pillar. Yes.
Wasn't DNS failing?
Oh, that's real bad. That's so it just like won't work. Which one's
I
that?
just got it on pages.
Oh, okay. That means the page is like real crap. Which one did you put in?
I just typed in Boston Museum on the developed.
Okay.
Google.com.
Yeah.
I got it free for USS Constitution Museum.
Woo! Sorry, your 7 is no longer the winner. That's real pathetic. Charleston needs to step it up. All right, we're gonna move on because I don't think anybody can beat a 3. I'm gonna use that example at work tomorrow. I'm gonna be like, guys, you know what site is so bad? Okay, so we did the technical stuff. So we're assuming everybody like fixed their website, so at least it like loads, unlike the USS Constitution, and just get a little bit onto the actual stuff on page. So there's like a little bit of a checklist that basically you got to pick your keywords, and then you got to optimize your content for said keywords, or you got to create content based off of those keywords. So first things first is, are people searching for those keywords? I think something that brands fall into. We have like a lingerie company at work, and then like they will sell like a nightgown, and they'll call it something ridiculous. It'll be like, I mean, like a sleeve shirt is like at least like half of the thing. They have these like brammies, which are like a bra cami situation. But they'll like call things like not like what we call them. And it's this idea of like, some brands are like, I made this thing and like this is like a halter top. And then others are like, what if we called that like a tie top? And it's like, okay, like you can call it what you want, but nobody's searching for that when they're looking for that. So it's the idea of like trying to figure out like, are the people that are my audience actually looking for those keywords? And part of that is like the audience thing, like maybe some of the words that like we use to search for things, like our parents call other things, or if like, hey, if I'm like a soda company and like I only exist in the Midwest, like maybe I call it like pop and optimize for that rather than soda or Coke or whatever. And then do the keywords you're targeting have a higher search volume? So the idea of like, hey, like maybe like you have a super specific word, but only 10 people are searching for it. That's fine if it's like, I work, one of my clients is a cancer care facility. So like some of those keywords are like only like 100 people get it. So like if you got like 10 searches, you know, like that's 10% of your market. But like I'm trying to sell a donut and I go for such like a unique keyword that there's only like 30 people searching for it. It's like, hey, like just call it a donut, you know, or like call it something, like call it what it is. And then it's like, are the keywords relevant to your page? So like if I'm selling something that like Dunkin' has, is that they like now sell an apple cider donut, like an actual apple cider donut, but they used to sell 3 different types of donuts that were apple themed, but were not an apple cider donut. And like nobody's searching for an apple and spice donut. They're searching for an apple cider donut. This is like basically the same thing of like, hey, like even if you optimized the apple and spice donut to be like an apple cider donut, if it is not an apple cider donut, it's like not going to be relevant. One of the coffee companies I worked at, we did like the ready to drink coffee, which is like coffee in a can, and they were calling it iced espresso, which it is not, because it was not espresso, nor was it ice, because it was in a can. But like that was just what they called it. And when they like pitched it, they're like, oh, like, you know, like you can get your iced espresso. And we're like, hey, there's a lot more searches for iced espresso than there is ready to drink coffee. But you are not selling iced espresso. So when like someone comes to your page and they're like all excited to buy your iced espresso and it's coffee in a can, they're like, this sucks. Like I knew exactly what I wanted and it wasn't this. So even if there's less searches, like make sure it's an actual, like it's the most relevant. So then like once you have your keyword list, there's like 2 different things. You're either like taking current content and making it better, or you're creating new content. So it's like for optimizing the content, like is it in the titles? There's like metadata, which is things that like show up in Google that we'll talk about. It's like, are the pictures named what it's named? Are you using like consistent language? And then the creating content, first things first, like just don't like make stuff just to make stuff. Do you like have stuff you can just optimize, like rather than for us, like with the iced espresso, like hey, just like rename the current page ready to drink coffee. Like you don't need to like make a separate thing when you like have a thing. And then like a little bit into folder structures, like does it live where it makes sense? And then is there any like content gaps? Like if like you're already covering all of the content, like you don't just need to like make stuff to make stuff. Like part of it is like just like focus on the one page, because you don't want to like cannibalize if like we're trying to sell ready to drink coffee and we have like 7 pages optimized for ready to drink coffee, Google's gonna be like, okay, like I guess like this one, but like really if it's like the category page is what you want to rank, then like optimize that, maybe optimize the other one for like caramel ready to drink coffee, something like that. So then just getting a little bit in the importance of the text-based high quality content. This is the idea of like if Google's gonna read your page, people are gonna read your page. We want people it to be crawlable, to be read. Sometimes websites will put like text as pictures because they want it to be like really pretty. But then when Google sees a picture, like it doesn't matter if it's this beautiful picture of a donut that I made, or if it's like, that's like the word hey, but if it's a picture, then Google like doesn't know what it says. We'll get into alt tags later that goes a little bit into that, but it's this idea of like, you have like actual text and then you have pictures and like, it's not gonna be able to read a picture the same way it can text. So it's important that like you are providing content that is like legible for the person or Google search engine reading it. And then also kind of what we talked to you about user intent is the idea of both what we talked about at the very beginning of what do you want people to show? So like kind of like optimize for like what you're selling. So if you go to Google and search Harry Potter, there's 1.5 million searches, 1.5 million people a month are searching for Harry Potter. Like when I'm searching for Harry Potter, do I want to watch the movie? Do I want to know when his birthday is? Do I want to know how Daniel Radcliffe's doing? Do I want to go to the amusement park? Like if I'm Audible and I'm selling an audiobook of Harry Potter, like you can't go after Harry Potter. That's like way too vague. So then it's like this next thing of like, okay, like we're selling a Harry Potter audiobook. So that's 14.8 thousand searches a month. So that's obviously significantly less than 1.5 million, but it's significantly more relevant for the actual product that you're selling. And then when you get into like the branded thing of like, hey, I have Audible and I want to listen to one of the Harry Potter like companion pieces or whatever, like there's 880 searches a month. So it's like very specific. Like I have an Audible account, I want to listen to Harry Potter. So it's the idea of, hey, like, you know, less than 1,000 is obviously not 1.5 million, but the 880 people searching for Audible Harry Potter are much more likely to buy an Audible copy of Harry Potter than someone searching Harry Potter. And then just kind of getting into the URL structure. So that's like the first thing you like see on a page. So you have like the protocol, which is, this is a bad one because it's no S. We want it to be secure. But then you have like the domain name, which is like www.whatever.com. And then you have your subdirectory, which is like your first like folder structure. So maybe you got like a blog and you got your products or your menu or like, I don't know, like tops or something. And then like the specific like page name. Some there's like, depending on how big your site is, if you're like at like American Eagle, you might have like clothes, women, tops, crop, like whatever, like all the way out. And then like the specific like SKU number or whatever. But it's the idea of like everything kind of is like nested in something that makes sense. Like don't have like 30 of them because that's excessive, but it's the idea of like having more general like category structure so that if you like look just at the URL, you like have an idea of what you're gonna get. And then talking a little bit about metadata. So this is the idea of you can like kind of control it because Google can just like Google at the end of the day will do whatever it wants, but you can like suggest what you want it to do. So metadata is what you mark up as your title and description. So it's this idea of like, you can put for NUMA, you can put your title tag as like NUMA Northeastern University Marketing Association. And like, maybe that's not on the homepage, the first thing you see on the NUMA page is like about NUMA, but like, that's like the descriptor of like, when people are searching, we want them to see that. So that's like a great example of like marking something up, usually within like 50 to 60 characters. And then the next one is the meta description. So you can kind of like throw out like, hey, like this is what this page is about. These are both opportunities to put in like some specific keywords that you think people are searching for. It's like a short description of the page. So it's about like under 160, otherwise it starts to cut it off. And then headers, which are on the specific page. like different things are marked up as different things. It's like uses a hierarchy structure. So like H1 is usually your title. If you have like subtitles, it's usually like an H2. If you got like a really important bulleted list, it might be an H3. So it's kind of like an easier way on the back end for if like someone who's looking at the code or like a spider like going through being like, okay, like the H1 is about Numa, this page is about Numa. And then it's like the latest posts, join Numa, get involved, employee resources. Like these are things that have been marked up as like slightly more important than the things underneath, which is like under employee resources, like looking for smart, passionate marketing teams to join your team, things like that. Like that to them is like, that's more of a description of the employer resources. And then the last thing in this section is importance of alt tags. So this is the idea. Alt tags are becoming even more important because it's like if you have a screen reader, so if you like are visually impaired and need like to have an image described to you, having an image that is like marked up properly for some like bigger brands is like legally a requirement, but then also in general, like images, like if you go to Google Images and search for something, like those can rank on its own. So this idea of like, this is grumpy cat. So like a bad example is saying like grumpy cat, comma, cat is grumpy, comma, grumpy cat GIF, because like that doesn't actually describe what the picture is. Versus if you were to describe like black and white cat with blue eyes looking very grumpy, like that is more of like an accurate description than if like a screen reader is gonna like describe the image to someone, like that's what the image is. Because if I'm like, oh, like that's grumpy cat, like if you've never seen grumpy cat, like you don't know what he looks like. So for an activity, does anybody want to pick a meme and describe it to me? Here are the selections. You and I made eye contact.
Sean being more direct.
Yes. I would probably throw in like one does not simply walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, describing a bit more of like, I don't know, like an okay. Yep. Shock Pikachu face is perfect. You wanna do it?
Like accomplished baby.
Yes.
Accomplished baby fist pump.
Yep. That's a great example. Anybody in the chat?
Stephen has one.
Yes.
Oh, little girl smirking at his house birth now.
Perfect. Yeah, so it like feels weird and like awkward to describe it like that because like for those of us that like are not visually impaired, like I know when like someone says like girl, evil girl in front of fire, like I know what that means. Like I know what that looks like, or like girl mad guys oogling other girl. Like I like you don't like need to describe them in the same way, but it's like very helpful for like if I was like trying to like when I was trying to find these memes and like I knew which memes I wanted, but I like didn't know what words to put in to like find it, which is like really, really awkward trying to find like some of these. It's like, what would you put in to like get it out? So this idea of like, hey, like Shock Pikachu face is perfect. I mean, that's also the name of it, but it's the idea of like that describes it perfectly. And like some of them, it's just like, especially when you have like, let's say it's like a model with like a handbag, it's like woman holding brown leather Madewell tote bag. So if I'm searching for like brown leather Madewell tote bag, which like I probably, if I wanted one, like I would probably know like that's how I describe it. Like it's more likely to come up in image search. And then if I like for something like that, I might immediately go to images instead of like clicking on all the actual shops, going there and then like maybe from the image, like just going directly to site that way. So then our last section is on local and social. So to really do local, you need to Google My Business, which is free, which is great. Which as a result means that like you don't get like as great analytics as you do with some other platforms, but it's free. So this is the idea of like you own your business. So if you have like a physical location for something, and sometimes like if you don't, like you're like a laundry or cleaning service or like something like that, like there are like other workarounds. For the most part, if you like own a cafe, like you can like make your business profile. So I to paint storming in my parents' house. So it's the idea of, okay, like what's the name of it? Like when people are like searching for your store, they like want to get to your store, what would they put in? And then the second most important thing is the address. Like if they wanted to come to said store, where does said store exists, and then the phone number in case they have questions. So this information is necessary to even like begin this process. Like you gotta have the NAP info. Otherwise, like they're just like this, they're like, this is incomplete. And if like you don't have a phone number, then like Google's gonna be like, you're probably sketchy. So they're not gonna like show it as much as they would others. So then there's other information that you can use to bolster the listings. So like you can pick categories. So there's like a gazillion categories, which we'll use for the activity. So this is a paint store. So we would mark it as a paint store. You have service options. So here it's in-store shopping and curbside pickup. For something like a QSR, it would be like whether or not like you can like do delivery, whether it's dine-in, things like that. And then hours, always great to have. And then like finishing touches, images. You can put like images on like I could go to the Sherwin-Williams store and upload an image. That's someone who recently had to get rid of some sketchy images from a local listing. Anyone can put anything up on your listing. So if like the only picture somebody has is something like, it's like the picture of like the toilets in your like store, and they're like, this is gross. When I like come to this, and instead of this, let's say beautiful, doesn't this average strip mall front, if it's like a picture of your bathrooms and it's like gross, then like, you know, maybe I don't want to go to this paint store, maybe I want to go to a different paint store. And then you got the calls to action. So it's like, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to go to your website, get directions? You can like save it or call. And then the different reviews. So like you want like good reviews. If you were typing like best, whatever, you need to have at least a 4.0 rating for that. So in general, good to do. And then our last activity break. So there's a lot of categories for Google that you can like put your store in. So this is, if you don't mind dropping it in the chat, I'm such a chat expert. Oh, I didn't want to do. Basically, this is going to be a list of all of the categories that you can pick. You could also probably just Google my business categories. But here is an example of a place in Cambridge / Somerville. It is a ESH Circus Acts, and it's currently listed as a training center in Somerville. And this is a picture of their homepage. Does anyone want to give me other examples of what kind of category this could be in besides training center? They got like weirdly specific categories too. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah.
Like gymnastics center.
Yep. There's like a circus thing. There's like a gym. I wouldn't even be surprised. Like, I'm just gonna click on the link real quick and then I'll figure out my way back here. So that wasn't too bad. They got like a weird amount. Like if you're an Abbey, an accounting school, an acupuncture school, but an acupuncturist. You're a commercial photographer versus a wedding photographer versus a photographer. So this is this idea of you can get like, you know, if you're an agricultural high school, so this idea of getting like weirdly specific. So like in general, like pick like don't pick the weirdest category to describe yourself. So like maybe a training center, they find that when people are searching for circus arts, they like normally are like a training center near me. But maybe like it turns out more people are searching for circus arts near me, or like gym near me if like people want this for the gymnastics center. So this idea of doing that and just kind of like figuring out what works best. And then you should also own your social profiles. This is like kind of sketchy if you don't. And then you should add them to the bottom or the side of your website just so people know where to follow you outside of like just your website. So in summary, this process of tailoring your website and content to get more organic traffic from search engines. Anybody has questions? I am here. Or in the chat.
Yeah. Anyone online can go for it.
Chat's like, no thanks. It's like this girl wants the chat to happen to her. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no. No offense to the digital marketing class I took with Jakob Bart, but yeah, pretty much everything they just teach you there. Which is like, honestly, like in all my co-ops, I just kind of like showed up and I'm like, what you can teach me this time?
How did you get into like a marketing co-op or like a marketing or a digital marketing job, like with no like SEO experience
Yeah,
prior?
so for my first one, I worked at Rapid7 and I was so obnoxious. I thought like I was like the smartest kid there ever was. And I was gonna get like every single co-op, and instead I got like 2 co-ops for my first co-op. So I like the one, like it was just like a much younger crowd, and it was like cybersecurity at like 100 Summer Street. So I was like, this sounds cool. And they did digital marketing, and they were really cool because they were in like a mid-sized company, so they were like just hitting 1,000 people, but post IPO. So like a lot of hands-on stuff with like digital marketing, and it was like a inbound marketing and SEO specialist, which basically was like demand gen question mark. So then I like that. Then I went to VMware, did brand and creative, which like wasn't my jam. Then went to Havas and did insights and data strategy, which I liked. And then ended up at Digitas doing SEO.
Cool.
I didn't know anything starting any of those jobs. For my like Havas interview, the woman who interviewed me, who I really like, was like, do you know like how to like do a Nielsen crosstab? I'm like, no. And she was like, do you know how to like look up like work data? I'm like, no. And she like, we did it like 2 or 3 more things. I'm like, why don't you just assume that I don't know any of that, and I'll just learn it in my first month here. And she was like, okay. Like, I was like, we do not need to read through the entire list.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know any of it.
Right. I was like, I'm sure it's not that hard. And it wasn't.
All right, well, if anyone has questions,
Yeah.
feel free to come and chat with Catherine
I'm here.
individually. Grab some pizza. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to everyone online. A couple people dropped off, but
They were just too obsessed with the
they were
chat.
just like, we hate the chat and we hate that Catherine's pushing.
They're like, we hate Catherine.
Wow.
They're like, this girl, she's the worst. Yeah.
Thank you. very
Catherine
much.
graduated so long ago.
Thank you so much for talking about that.
Yeah, so I worked as a senior SEO analyst. So maybe I also have your dad, and then we're
and
also
yes,
going
I
to
all my
I've been on Dunkin' for nearly like the 2 or 3 years I've been there. I've been on MSK since like February, and then I've been like helping out.
Yeah.
Were you on campus before this?
Yeah, I
They're
did.
like.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So then I moved to the agency, which is kind of cool. Like, so for Dunkin', we do a lot of like editorial strategies, and we do blog.
I'm sorry?
And this time we do a lot more like technical stuff. And, like,
Slides, I have to check with Catherine, so she's okay.
And then,
Sharing them.
the
The
newer
newer
ones
ones
I
I
can
can share, because I
like
share
on
it to our codes and things
like
like
helping with
that.
like blog content.
These
And then for like
slides,
Dunkin',
I will double check,
if
if you don't see anything in the general Slack.
Hey, like,
by
do you want to
tomorrow,
shop?
I would assume no. What was your name?
So it's like kind of cool because
It's actually, okay, I think I talked to you.
client.
So,
Very tech
If
heavy.
it's a no, I'll
And
just,
I'm like, no.
like,
It's cool because I feel like.
Thank you very much for coming.
Oh.
Was here for a while, but like move people around or whatever, so I tend to look more like editorial.
Yeah,
content,
like
so
60
content, so like-
60s and
so
shorts.
like, hey, we need someone for
60s and
audio,
shorts.
do you like
That
writing
is,
a book?
yeah, I know, it's like,
You know.
everyone I went to high school with would do that.
Even high 50s. These are nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
so I started
more
as
noise.
a,
Antarctica level.
but I like,
For you.
I've worked with.
Like Antarctica level.
Yeah. My first semester here.
I like the most relevant job
Back
before
from
was
Stop
Rapid7.
halfway. Staying up bus stop to those. So.
Exactly.